Hello everyone and welcome to a really awesome game from the penultimate round of the Superbet Chess Classic. It's Bogdan-Daniel Deac versus Levon Aronian, and it's again, like I said, a really well fought game, and it features one move that really just blew my mind, so hopefully you guys will enjoy it as well. But before we get to the actual game, I would just like to mention regarding the previous video and the Nikhil Kamath controversy. As usual, I do the video as soon as something happens in the world of chess, and I started receiving a lot of emails how this really awesome game, how an incredible thing happened. And although you don't think someone would use an engine, you simply don't. I mean, if we just go around pointing fingers, you're using an engine, then it kind of all falls apart, especially since now 99% of chess being played is online chess, so everyone could be using an engine. So I don't know, it feels like everyone should be given the benefit of the doubt, but even though, okay, it's very easy to say, okay, 99 point or whatever, 98.9% accuracy that was played in the game against Anand, of course, it sounds very incredible and fishy. But is it impossible? Of course not. It could be possible. I don't know. I've never heard of the guy. He might be playing, online chess 24/7 in his, not 24/7, but he could be playing all the time in his spare time. So, like I said, as usual, I make the video as soon as I hear the news, and well, in the end, he didn't apologize on Twitter. He kind of said that it was all done in good spirits, but okay, to maybe if he's not a chess player, maybe he doesn't realize how big of a deal this is, using an engine, especially against a guy like Anand, the 5-time world champion, especially in a charity event, but. I don't know. Seems like there was really no reason to do such a thing. But yeah, just wanted to get that out in the open. But it just puts a sour taste after witnessing something like that, because we want great things to happen in the world of chess, and we want miracles to happen, and this especially with Anand resigning and allowing him to have the win, because without that Anand basically just crushed Stockfish here. So it really just all felt in good gesture, and it felt like everyone was having a good time. I wasn't watching the stream. I had no idea what was happening. I just received a bunch of emails and thought it was a really good story. But as it turns out, the gentleman was using computer assistance, and that's how he was able to take down former world champion Vishwanathan Anand. So no miracles occurred yesterday. So that being said, let's check out this game. So Deac versus Aronian, let's see what happens here. So with the white pieces, Deac opens with e4. We have c5 going for the Sicilian defense, knight to f3, d6, and now bishop to b5 with check, going for the Rossolimo attack, knight to d7, and now d4. Now you don't mind even capturing with the queen on d4, because there is no knight on c6 to kick away the queen. So here we have c captures, queen captures, and now a6, pushing the bishop back to e2, and now knight to g to f6. Levon continues developing. We have castles, and now e6. And it's interesting that this position occurred only a handful of times, and in all of the games that were played, white did not win a single game. So most of the games were won by black pieces, and I think white got a draw in one of them. But here, Deac wants to change this, and here he plays rook to d1. You could also consider a move like c4, going for this sort of a Marozzi type structure. I don't know, whenever I get the chance, I always like to get that c4 move in, but he has a different plan. He plays rook to d1, and this is now a new move in the position. So already, as of move 8, we have a completely new game. So here, bishop to e7, Levon just continues developing, and now again, not interested in going for this structure, knight to c3. We have queen to c7, and now comes a4. And here, probably the reason why he prefers the pawn on c2 instead of on c4, as this is kind of counterintuitive, is that he wants to play queen to c4 at some point and trade off queens here. So here we have castles and a5 now, grabbing more space here. We have rook to d8, e8, and now comes bishop to e3. So both players just nicely continuing development. We have knight to g4, now attacking the bishop here, and you do not want to give up your dark square bishop, so bishop to g5, knight g back to f6, and now he probably wanted to check if bishop back to e3 was going to be played, and not that he was interested in a draw or anything. He's fighting for first place, and after that lost Mamedyarov, he really has to give it all he's got. So here, queen to c4, offering this queen trade. We have queen captures on c4, bishop captures, and now b5. It doesn't matter if you play b6 or b5, same thing will happen. This is a move you play, no questions asked. So here, a captures on b6 en passant, and now knight captures on b6, attacking Deac's bishop here, bishop back to e2, and now bishop to b7. So for the moment, okay, the pawn is attacked twice, but it's not really a problem, as the bishop here would hang. We have knight to d2, now preparing to improve this structure with a move like f3. We have rook to d7, now preparing to double up rooks on the c file, and bishop to d3, adding more support here. We have rook to c7, and now comes f3. So here, again, this pawn still remains on c2. Deac prefers this setup with the bishop on d3, and now this pawn will be defended with the bishop. So here we have d5. And d5, again, if you've been following this channel for some time, you know that I always say whenever black gets a chance to execute that d5 in the Sicilian, then all is well for him. So let's see how the game continues. We have bishop to e3. And Levon now happily exchanges here. We have d captures on e4, and now knight d captures on e4. You could also consider bishop captures on b6, saying that, okay, but now your rook is also under attack, but just rook c6. And now black will win either the light square or the dark square bishop. So after something like knight c captures on e4, you're going to capture here, and yes, the material is equal, but black still has the bishop pair. He has a very active rook. He's soon going to have another very active rook, and it's going to be it's an okay position for both white and black, but I don't know, one might prefer this with the black pieces. So here, after d captures on e4, we have knight d captures on e4 instead, and now knight f to d5. We have bishop to d4, of course, your bishop still hangs here, and now f6. Well, it's a very useful move, numbing this bishop on d4, and at some point, if you want, you can even execute e5. So here we have b3. Now, if this knight moves, maybe now we can finally get this c4 move in, and if you look at the position, the material is still completely equal, but the Deac is the only one with the pass pawn. So if this c pawn starts marching forward, and he does have plenty of support to do so, could be very interesting. So here, king f7, Levon improves the position of the king, and now knight captures on d5. We have knight captures on d5, and now again not going for c4, but first bishop to c4. So what do you play here? Here, Levon played a5, now with the idea of a4, which would either create a pass pawn for him, or if b captures, of course, you're just going to lose the bishop on c4. So here we have c3. Now the c3 pawn is defended, so it's not a problem. We can capture here. And now, yeah, if we go a4, which Levon did not play, then we simply trade everything off. Bishop captures, and then now rook captures on a4. So we can do this because the c3 pawn is now nicely defended, and if bishop captures on b3, we're just going to play bishop captures, and now rook captures, and now bishop captures on d1, and we get this position where black is okay, perfectly fine, might be even better, but it's not much to look forward to. So instead we have g5. Levon starts increasing the pressure on the king's side, and now rook to a4. A nice rook lift, leaving the option of maybe doubling rooks on the a file. We have f5, forcing this knight to move, knight back to g3, and now not grabbing more space with f4, but rather bishop to c5. And here we have a nice capture fest in the center. Bishop captures on c5, rook captures, and bishop captures. And here Deac said, all right, now I've traded everything off. This is very easy to hold. Only now will I execute this c4 move. So it took some time for this to happen, but now it is on the board, and this is now a passed pawn. It was a passed pawn for quite a while, but now it finally started moving. So here, bishop to c6, pushing this rook back, rook to a3, And now a4. You have to do this to break white's pawn structure. So if white pushes, then you can capture this, or if white captures, then you can capture this, and you will not have all that much trouble dealing with the passed a pawn. So here we have rook d to a1, but it's not a problem. This rook is not needed here. So rook to g8, and this is how Levon starts creating. So here we have b captures on a4, and now comes not captures on c4. You can always play this. First comes g4. And now the problem is if white just ignores this, starts pushing on the queen side, then you can open up the position here, and that's it. Black just wins. If you capture this, then f4 wins the knight. It's pinned, cannot move. There's not much for white to play here. So instead, after g4, we have f4, not allowing the g file to open up. And only now rook captures on c4. So now you could start pushing, but first your f pawn is hanging. So knight to e2, we defend the pawn, and now rook to b8. Now Levon wants to bring the rook to b2 and put more pressure to the white king. So here we have rook 3 to a2, preventing this, but now bishop to d5. Now after the rook moves, this rook comes under attack, but white says there is no good square for this rook to move to, so a5. We have rook c to b4, now doubling on the b file, now preparing bishop to b2. Also, the rook is now under attack, so rook to d2, and now rook to b2. Attacking the rook is undefended, and now while you could trade here, for example, captures and captures, now the knight is under attack. If you move the knight, then the g2 pawn is under attack, so you have to play something like king f2. But now we play bishop to c4, attack the knight twice, and after the knight is defended, we can play rook to a2, pick up this pawn. We're going to be up a pawn, and we're going to have a very, very good game here with black. Whether it's enough to win, for Levon, probably. So here, after rook to b2, we have rook a to d1, just defending the rook on d2. But now rook captures, we have rook captures and rook to a8. And now with the bishop covering the a2 square, the rook cannot join the defense of the a pawn. So here, knight to c3 with a double attack on the bishop, but just rook captures on a5. And this is what it took for Levon to win the pawn. And now he's up a pawn, and he will try to push this for a full point. So here, king to f2, Deac also starts improving the position of his king. You could also, and probably many people would, just trade here with captures, and then just move the rook because, black is up a pawn. You want to play a rook endgame. You do not want to play a minor piece endgame. You do not want to exchange rooks and then allow black to be up a pawn with minor pieces on the board. So this seems like an idea, but he decides that the knight will come in handy. He starts with king to f2, and now Levon says, thank you for this opportunity, and now he moves the bishop, saying you will not be capturing this bishop anytime soon. So here, knight to d1, and now comes rook to a4. Again, putting pressure on this f4 pawn. We have g3, and now rook to a1. So now, if this knight moves, then you can infiltrate via rook to h1, and then pick up the h2 pawn. And interestingly, this is exactly what the Deac does. He plays knight to b2, and he allows this. He wants to create a sort of a barrier here for Levon. You could play something like rook to c2, and again try to go for this rook's endgame. And then, for example, if rook captures, rook to d2 check, king g1. Now maybe yes, okay, you are in a rook's endgame. Your opponent is up only one pawn, but the king is here completely cut off from the game. He's not entering the game anytime soon, and could be possible to maybe find something here for black. But instead, after rook to a1, Deac makes it a little bit easier for Levon. He plays knight to b2, and now Levon again says, thank you for this yet another opportunity, and plays rook to h1. So now this pawn will fall. We have knight to d3. Now, interestingly, you could also play king to e3, but he didn't, to kind of keep an eye on this pawn. He just played knight to d3, going after this knight to e5 check. But first, Levon picks up the pawn with check, king to e3, and now rook captures on d2. So just getting the rooks off the board, king captures and king to e7. And this is the position that Deac decided that he will hold. He's down 2 pawns, but he has a very, very active position. Knight to e5, he's going to play king to e3, and Levon only has a light square bishop, and all of his pawns are on light square. So here he says, your bishop can't do anything to my pawns, your king cannot approach my pawns, how are you going to win this game? So let's see what happened here. King to d6, king e3, and the Deac is very happy. He says, okay, you cannot pass. We have king to d5, king to d3. We have bishop to e8, now nicely controlling this knight, but also controlling the very important h5 square here. So here, king back to e3, now h5. We have knight to d3, and now king to c4. Knight to e5 check, Deac simply repeats the moves. King to c3, knight to d3, and now Levon plays h4. And now the bishop here will be extremely handy because you do not want to allow white's pass pawn to start marching forward. So here you do not want to allow h3. That's also just losing. So we have to play g captures on h3 and now g3, getting this pass pawn in. And now the thing is the king is attacking the knight. So Deac cannot attack the g3 pawn as he would lose the knight. So first we have to move the knight to e5. And now this is a problem. The knight has to come to c1, and then the threat is knight to e2 check, which would win the g3 pawn. And then if we play something like bishop to h5, it's still not a problem. We're just going to play knight to e2 check to pick up the pawn, and if we trade, then the king can easily now reach this pawn, and this pawn will now be winning. So this would even be winning for white if Levon would go for this trade after knight to c1. He would have to go for something like g2 and then, you know, just play this to a draw. But luckily for him, after g3, knight to e5 was played. But even this is pretty incredible as you have to be super precise to win this. So feel free to pause the video here and win the game for Levon while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on being a true master of the endgame. There is only one move that wins this position. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's bishop to h5. And now you see what's happening. Now the bishop, the pawn, and the king are controlling all of these squares in front of the white king, and the white king has nowhere to go. All of these squares are covered, and he's simply stuck there. There is nowhere to go. So only the knight can move here. We have knight to d7, and now comes a move that Levon really played, well, dare I say it, like an engine. Because it's such a brute force move that I again urge you to pause the video and try to find this while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this, well, another incredible idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's pawn to e5. And for this move to be played, you really have to calculate everything. And Samai suggested on Twitter that whenever a player plays such a strong move that, you know, an engine would play, that's really a top move recommended by the engine, that I should award a Nikhil Kamath head for the occasion. So here I am awarding the Nikhil Kamath head for such a strong engine move to Levon for finding this brilliancy. So there we have it. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you haven't, you know, mention it to Samai that his ideas are bad, but otherwise, you know, all is good. I thought it was pretty funny. But yeah, e5 is incredibly strong because what do you do here? Again, the king cannot move. And what do you do here? Instead of e5, you could do something like king to c2 just to show you what would happen. Then you allow white to escape, because now you allow knight to f6, you attack the bishop, and once the bishop moves, now you start pushing your pass pawn, and that's it. This is enough for a draw. If, for example, e5, we're just going to play h6, e captures on f4, king captures, g2, h7, and now we both get a queen, and this is enough for white to draw the game. However, in the game with e5, now you don't have such luxury, because what do you play here? Now, if you try to repeat the same idea, knight to f6, you are one tempo faster. So e captures on f4. First we're going to move the bishop, and then after the pawn moves, now we're going to play e captures on f4 with check. king captures and g2, and we are much faster. Now if h6, we're just gonna bring a queen into the game. If h7, queen g7, you stop promotion, everything is working out for black. Easy win. So instead, after e5, you have to capture it. Knight captures on e5 was played, but now comes king to c2, and now it's very much different because again you don't have a move. All of these squares are taken from the white king. What do you play here? Knight to d3 was played, but here king to d1 by Levon, and it was in this position on move 62 that Bogdan-Daniel Deac resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Yes, it seems like the black king cannot approach, and if you start pushing the pawn, the king will stop it by playing king to f2, but you just have to prevent king f2, and that's it. By playing king to d1, you've done that, because now either the king moves to d4 and then you're able to enter the game, or you can just push g2 and that's winning, or you have to move the knight, but that also doesn't help. If you move the knight, then you've released the e1 square, king e1 can be played, now knight d3, check king f1, and now we're gonna push our pawn to victory, as the king is not the king cannot approach the f2 square. So really incredible game, played nicely fought by both of them, and it's interesting. Deac made some very interesting choices throughout the game. One of the more interesting ones was just allowing Levon to grab that h2 pawn, but okay, he thought that maybe he will be able to hold this because the position was as it was, but in the end Levon was, if there's a chance to create something on the board, he of course will create it. This was the penultimate round. Going into the final round, Shakhtar Mamedyarov is leading the tournament with 5.5 points, and he's followed by Levon Aronian, Alexander Gishuk, and Wesley So with 4.5 points. So it's interesting what will happen in the final round. We'll check it out and see who will win the Superbet Chess Classic tournament. So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Happy Birthday Ask Paul, Avijit Banerjee, Tsanko Tsolo, Western Carpet Cleaning Incorporate, and Isaac Garuda for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this very nice tournament, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.